When my daughter-in-law pointed at my kitchen and said, "That fridge is mine," I smiled and started the clock. I am 58 years old. I play polite, and I document everything. By the time she found out who actually owned the house and the accounts, the doorbell rang with the one person she never expected to see. My name is Evelyn Carrington. I am 58 years old, a widow, and until recently, I was an art teacher. Teaching art to teenagers for 25 years instills a particular kind of discipline. You learn to appreciate structure, to see the composition beneath the chaos, and to never, ever raise your voice when a steady, quiet observation will do. My husband, Marshall, always said I had the patience of a glacier. Slow, steady, and unstoppable. After Marshall passed, the farm felt too large, too quiet. The acres of silence were deafening. My only son, Luke, lives in Ridgeview, Colorado, and at 32, he's a successful engineer at a company called Apex Dynamics. I wanted to be closer to him, so I sold the farm, every last piece of it, and bought a solid, manageable house in Ridgeview, a house with good bones and a kitchen that faced the morning sun. Luke was thrilled, or so I thought. He had recently married Tara Whitlow, a 29-year-old PR freelancer with a phone that seemed permanently attached to her ear. Their new condominium was undergoing a massive renovation, delayed by supply chain issues, and they needed a place to stay. Just for a few months. "Mum," Luke had promised. Of course. I said yes. He is my only son. They moved in, and the few months began to stretch. The energy of the house shifted. My quiet mornings were replaced by the frantic tapping of Tara's keyboard and a stream of high-energy conference calls. Then came the day of the refrigerator. I walked into my kitchen, the kitchen I had paid for with the proceeds from my farm, and stopped. Tara was standing there, holding a sheet of plastic labels and a black marker. She had already affixed several to the gleaming stainless steel door. Tara's shelf. Luke's snacks. TW Media, do not touch. She was physically attaching a small padlock to the freezer handle. She turned, not with embarrassment, but with a bright, challenging smile. "Oh, hi, Evelyn. Just getting us organized." She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at the appliance. "That fridge is mine. I bought it with my business account when we thought we were moving straight into the condo. So, just to keep things clear, this is my space. Buy your own food?" I looked at the padlock. I looked at her. I thought of the 25 years I managed school budgets, tracking every dime. I thought of the discipline it takes to build a life. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I simply nodded. A small, polite tilt of my head. "I see." I turned, walked to my study, and took out a new, leather-bound journal. At the top of the first page, I wrote the date. I wrote down her exact words. It was a habit, born from decades of documenting lesson plans, supply requests, and the occasional disciplinary issue. You always keep a record. That was the beginning. The labels were just the first sign. Soon, other things followed. Packages began arriving daily. Sleek black boxes from retailers I had never heard of, addressed to Tara Whitlow. My utility bills skyrocketed. The water bill alone suggested we were running a small hotel. Then, I went to the pantry. The walk-in pantry I had been so excited about when I bought the house, and my key wouldn't turn. The lock was new, a shiny brass deadbolt I had not installed. I checked the Wi-Fi password, which I keep written in my planner. It no longer worked. When I asked, Tara brushed it off. Oh, I upgraded our security protocol. It's for my clients. It's fine. You don't really use the internet much anyway. Do you? A few days later, the small camera on my front porch, the one I used to see when packages arrived, went dark. The feed was just black. I unplugged it, Tara announced, scrolling through her phone. It's invasive. We need our privacy. I finally approached Luke. I found him in the garage, tinkering with his bike. He looked tired, caught between two worlds. Luke. I started gently. We need to talk about the kitchen and the pantry. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just kept wiping at a perfectly clean gear. Mum, please. Can you just be understanding? Tara is under an incredible amount of stress with work. She's trying to land a huge account. This PR freelancing world is cutthroat. She just needs things to be a certain way right now. A certain way? I asked. In my house. It's our house too, for now. He mumbled, and I knew I had lost him for the moment. He was defending her. I walked away from him, back to my study. I looked at the closed door. I was a guest in my own home. My son was asking me to be understanding, while his wife was annexing my property, piece by piece. I sat at my desk. I am a teacher. I know that a direct confrontation with a personality like Tara's is useless. It's what she wants. She wants the drama, the fight, the scene. She feeds on that energy. I would not give it to her. I opened my journal. I would not confront. I would observe. I would document. I would, as Marshall used to say, let the glacier move. I began a new page titled Household Expenses and a second titled Security and Access. I would gather the data. My first move was silent. I drove to the hardware store and bought a heavy-duty mechanical lock. Not a cheap padlock, but a solid steel cylinder lock. I installed it on the old oak file cabinet in my study. Inside, I placed the deed to the Ridgeview house, my will, and the portfolios for my accounts at Blue Mesa Credit Union and my Frontier mutual insurance policies. Marshall had left me well provided for, and I intended to protect it. Next, I opened my journal. The household expenses page began to fill up. I documented every single grocery receipt. A gallon of milk, $12. A head of lettuce, $8. My own spending was minimal. I also noted the electronic transfers from Luke. He had offered to chip in for utilities. The first week, it was $500. The second, $300. By the fourth week, the contribution was $150, labeled House Help. Simultaneously, as his contributions shrank, the utility bills I was still paying continued to climb. That fridge, as Tara called it, became the centerpiece of her domestic theater. It was a tool of control, and she wielded it like a tyrant. I was barred from the kitchen between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. I'm meal prepping for my clients. Evelyn, she would say, not looking up from her phone. The lighting is best for my Instagram stories right now. One morning, I went to get my yogurt and saw a new, aggressively bright pink label stuck to the vegetable crisper. In Tara's looping handwriting, it read, "For baby." I paused. There was no baby. There was not, to my knowledge, even the immediate plan for one. But it was there, a claim on a future that she was already monetizing. Tara approached me a few days later, her tone dripping with false concern. Evelyn, I was looking at these electricity bills. They're astronomical. I think if we transfer the accounts into my name, as a young household, we could apply for some state assistance. You know, energy grants for new families. She wanted the bills in her name. Proof of residency. I smiled. That same patient, glacial smile. What a clever idea. Tara, you are so savvy with these things. Great, she said. I'll print the forms. She presented me with applications to change the account holder for gas, water, and electric. I told her I would sign them by morning. That night, in my study, I made high-resolution copies of the blank forms. Then, I practiced my signature on a separate sheet of paper, a shaky, slightly different version, a draft signature. I signed her forms with that unsteady hand and left them on the counter. I kept the copies and my practice sheet. My investigation became richer thanks to Mrs. Alvarez from 3 houses down. We met while I was checking my mail. She is a lovely woman who also appreciates a good morning sun. Evelyn, dear, she said, lowering her voice. I don't mean to pry, but is your daughter-in-law in the catering business? I feigned mild surprise. Oh, not that I know of. She's in public relations. That's funny, Mrs. Alvarez said, squinting toward my house. I see the Vino van delivery truck there twice a week, and my granddaughter. She follows influencers. She showed me Tara's profile. Tara's advertising exclusive partner evenings at your address. $25 entry fee. I thanked her for the information. I went straight to my journal. Tara's obsession with cleanliness, which I had first mistaken for neatness, soon revealed itself as another form of control. New rules appeared daily, communicated via passive-aggressive texts. No strong-smelling foods, please. It interferes with the ambiance for my work. This meant my favorite curry spices were banned. Then, please don't have your friends over. We need to maintain a professional atmosphere for Luke and me. My book club, which had met monthly for 15 years, was suddenly homeless. The solution was obvious. I went to the appliance store and purchased the quietest mini-fridge I could find. It was small, silver, and fit perfectly in the corner of my study. I stocked it with my yogurt, my curry pastes, and a bottle of good Chardonnay. When Tara saw it, she laughed. It was a sharp, unpleasant sound. Oh, Evelyn, a mini-fridge that is so sad. But I guess it's good you're finally respecting my boundaries. I just smiled. She saw it as my defeat, my retreat. I saw it as a tactical move. I was stocking my war room. The partner evenings, Mrs. Alvarez mentioned, gave me the final piece I needed. A house used for commerce. I needed something formal. I drafted a document. I called it a temporary occupancy agreement. I used a template I found online from a fictional law firm, Whitcomb and Reed, just to make it look official. It was mostly boilerplate duration of stay, shared utility responsibilities, quiet hours. I presented it to them at dinner. What is this? Tara asked, suspicious. Just a formality, I said calmly. With the renovations taking longer than expected, I think it's best we put everything in writing, just to keep the harmony, so we all know the rules. Luke looked relieved. Mum's right, Tara. It's smart. It protects everyone. Tara, eager to be seen as the professional in the house, scanned it quickly. She saw the sections on utilities and nodded, likely assuming it reinforced her control. She signed it. Luke signed it. I signed it. She did not read the fine print. She did not read Clause 7. Clause 7 was very specific. It stated that the agreement would be immediately terminated, requiring the occupants to vacate within 24 hours, if the property was used for unauthorized commercial purposes, if paid events were hosted, or if structural changes like changing locks on shared spaces were made without the owner's written consent. I placed the signed agreement in my locked file cabinet, right next to the deed. Luke left for a 4-day business trip to Singapore. The house exhaled when he left, and then Tara inhaled, filling every space he had occupied. My home was no longer a home. It was a studio, a set, a backdrop for her burgeoning brand. The partner party was scheduled for the first night he was gone. Tara called it a wine-tasting gala. I watched from the landing as she set up. A large, professionally printed foam board propped on an easel by the kitchen entrance, catering by TW Media. About 15 people arrived, all looking like they had just stepped out of a magazine, all clutching their phones. They paid. I watched from the shadow of the hallway as Tara accepted $20 bills and credit card swipes via a device on her phone. Right here, in my foyer. I retreated to my study. I didn't need to see any more. I could hear the clinking of glasses and Tara's high, performative laugh. Later, when the gala was in full swing, I walked through the living room as if on my way to get a glass of water. I observed the wine being poured, which Tara was describing as a personally curated selection, was from the dozens of bottles delivered by the Vino van, all of which were stored in her section of that fridge. The food artichoke hearts, elaborate cheese displays, tiny quiches was all from the high-end grocery store, simply transferred to my own platters. She had even used my good silver. And this, I heard her say, is my signature roasted red pepper spread. The recipe is a family secret. I had seen the empty plastic tub from the deli in the recycling bin just that morning. For the next 2 days, the house was her set. She filmed lifestyle content. She staged a productive morning at my kitchen island, a cozy reading nook in my armchair after tossing the quilt Marshall and I had bought in '98 onto the floor, and a self-care evening in my bathtub, which I later had to scrub clean of glitter and rose petals. I stayed in my study, documenting the noise, the number of guests, the clear exchange of money. On the 3rd day, a package arrived. It wasn't one of the usual black boxes. This one was pastel blue, covered in cartoon stalks. It was a PR sample. I saw it on the porch, and before Tara could retrieve it, I read the label, TW Media, New Mother Initiative. I felt a cold prickle. I thought of the For Baby label on my crisper drawer that afternoon, while she was filming herself unboxing in the living room. I went into her unlocked office. It wasn't locked. She didn't see me as a threat. Pinned to her corkboard was a printed-out pitch. As a mother-to-be, I am seeking partnerships with brands that align with my new journey. There, in a discarded box in the corner, was a case of infant formula. 6 large cans. PR sample, not for resale. She wasn't just planning for a baby. She was fabricating one to land a contract. The party's aftermath was worse than the party itself. The sink was piled high with sticky wine glasses. My kitchen counter had a new, dark ring stain from a wine bottle. And when I went to put my own few dishes away, I noticed the gaps. 3. No. 4 of my sterling silver forks were missing. My grandmother's forks. I took out my phone. I photographed the sink. I photographed the stain. I photographed the empty slots in my silver chest. I logged the time, the date, and a quiet estimate of the number of people who had been in my home. That night, I was reading in my study when I heard her. Her voice was a low, angry hiss. She was in the kitchen, pacing. I stepped into the dark hallway. "I don't care what he said," she whispered into her phone. "It's my account. No, he's just stressed. Because of her." A pause. I held my breath. "Look, if she won't budge on the accounts, it's plan B. I'm serious. I've already looked it up. Golden Ridge Care. It's clean. It's state-funded. And they take residents on compassionate grounds if the family can't cope. I'll make sure they know we can't cope." My blood ran colder than the Colorado winter. Golden Ridge Care. She was planning to have me committed, to declare me incompetent. I leaned against the wall, my hand over my heart. I thought of Marshall, of the promise we made to build this life together. He had died in this house, in our bed, holding my hand. He had told me, "This is your house, Ev, your fortress. Don't ever let anyone else's noise fill these walls." And I was letting Tara's noise, her lies, her ambition, not just fill the walls, but threaten to tear them down and throw me out. No. This was not a stage for her lifestyle brand. This was not a holding cell until she could ship me to Golden Ridge. This was my home. I went to bed, but I did not sleep. The next morning, I came out for coffee. Tara was already in the kitchen, bright and cheerful. "Morning. Evelyn." I walked past the pantry. The new lock she had installed, the shiny brass deadbolt, was gone. In its place was a splintered hole and a pile of brass shavings on the floor. The door was slightly ajar. She had picked it, or broken it. She had finally breached my last physical boundary. I acted as if I saw nothing. I got my coffee, walked to my mini-fridge for my own milk, and went back to my study. She thought she had won. She thought she had broken in and taken the last piece. I sat at my desk and pulled the temporary occupancy agreement from the file. I read Clause 7 one more time. Unauthorized commercial purposes, paid events, structural changes, changing locks. She had just violated all three. The glacier had reached the valley. The name I had used on my fictional template, Whitcomb and Reed, turned out to be a real and very reputable law firm in downtown Ridgeview. It felt like Providence. I scheduled a consultation, and I brought the signed temporary occupancy agreement. I sat across from Naomi Pierce. She was young, perhaps 35, with sharp eyes and an immaculate blazer. She listened. I gave her the facts, not the emotions. I presented the "that fridge is mine" incident, the party, the fabricated baby, the missing silver, the broken pantry lock. And finally, the threat of Golden Ridge Care. I spoke in the same steady voice I used to use for budget committee meetings. When I finished, she looked at the agreement I had brought. "You drafted this yourself?" she asked. "I used a template," I replied. Her eyes scanned the pages, pausing, just as I knew she would. At Clause 7, a very small, very professional smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Clause 7 is very specific," she said. "Is it enforceable?" "Evelyn," she said, leaning forward slightly. "With the evidence you've collected, the photographs of the party, the receipts, the neighbour's testimony. Yes, it is ironclad." She explained the legal way to serve notice and what I would need to do next. I paid her retainer. I left her office feeling not vengeful, but balanced. I now had counsel. My next stop was the Blue Mesa Credit Union. I opened a new checking account, separate from my personal finances, titled Ridgeview Household Operations. I transferred in my own money to cover the upcoming month's mortgage and utilities. I then went home and sent a polite, cheerful email to both Luke and Tara. To streamline our finances, I've opened a dedicated house account. Please direct all future contributions here, with a memo for utilities or groceries. I attached the account information. I knew, of course, that they would not use it. But now, their lack of contribution would be officially documented. Next, I went to the Ridgeview City website. I researched municipal codes, just as I suspected. Tara's gala was an unregistered, ticketed event in a residential zone, a clear violation. I then, under my own name, applied for a residential community gathering permit for the upcoming Sunday. It was free for homeowners. The approval email arrived within an hour. I printed it and put it in the file. I addressed the pantry. Tara had violated the lock, but she had not taken the door. I repaired the splintered wood of the frame myself. I did not install a new lock. Instead, I installed a set of small, battery-powered door sensors. They are not cameras. They are discreet and perfectly legal. They do one thing: they create a digital log every time the magnetic contact is broken. I put one on the pantry door and one on my study door. I didn't need to see what she was doing. I just needed the time-stamped proof that she was entering spaces she had no right to. I visited Mrs. Alvarez, taking a batch of my own cookies. I also brought a typed sheet of paper. It was a draft of a formal neighborhood complaint, detailing the exact times of the party, the noise levels, the commercial delivery vans, and the trash left behind. It was factual, not emotional. I am not filing this, I explained. I am simply gathering my facts. Does this account seem accurate to you? She read it, her lips pursed. It's exactly what happened. Would you be willing to sign it as a witness if it ever became necessary? She picked up the pen I was holding. I'll sign it right now. I now had a signed witness statement. I placed it in the locked file cabinet with the deed and the agreement. It was Thursday evening. Luke was due back from Singapore the next day. It was time. I opened my email. I composed a new message to both Luke and Tara. Subject: family brunch, this weekend. Dear Luke and Tara, just a friendly reminder that this Sunday morning is the annual Carrington Family Reunion Brunch. I know we usually hold it at the farm, but this year I am so excited to host it here in Ridgeview. We are expecting about 20 people. Please keep the common areas, especially the kitchen, free from 10 a.m. Love, Mum. The Carrington family reunion was, of course, a complete fabrication. Marshall had no siblings, and my only family was Luke. The reply, as I knew it would be, came from Tara. It arrived in less than 5 minutes. Absolutely not. Sunday is my recipe testing day for a new client. The kitchen is booked by TW Media. You cannot have 20 people over. Find another venue. I waited 1 hour. Exactly. Then I replied to them both. Dear Tara, I appreciate your dedication to your work. However, per the temporary occupancy agreement we all signed, specifically Clause 3 regarding owner's use of common space, I am required to give only 72 hours notice for homeowner priority events. My notice was given today, Thursday, which is sufficient time. The brunch will proceed as scheduled. I am happy to share my event permit from the city if needed. The response was immediate. She was furious. Agreement. That piece of paper. We are paying our way. We contribute far more than you realize. We are keeping this house afloat. You owe us that space. This was the moment. I opened the spreadsheet I had been meticulously curating for 8 weeks. Every utility bill, every property tax payment, every grocery receipt. In a separate column, I logged the house help contributions from Luke, which had stopped 3 weeks ago. I attached the file to my email. I hit Reply All. Dear Tara, I think you may be mistaken about your contributions. Please see the attached ledger. Your financial contribution to this household to date remains at 0. The brunch is at 10 a.m. The silence from Tara after my email was heavy and cold. But I did not have time to focus on it. I had more calls to make. I telephoned Naomi Pierce. Naomi, I said, I have a new line of inquiry. Can you check the state business registry? I suspect my daughter-in-law may have registered her company, TW Media, at my address. I'll check it right now. Evelyn, she replied. She was back on the line in less than 5 minutes. Her voice was tight. You were correct. TW Media LLC was registered 6 weeks ago. The principal address is listed as your home. Evelyn, this is significant. It's not just a breach of your agreement. It's potential fraud. There's more, I said. And I told her about the fabricated pregnancy and the PR samples. The line was quiet for a moment. Keep your file, Naomi said. Every piece. This is moving beyond a simple eviction. Luke arrived home from Singapore that Friday, jet-lagged and weary. Tara was immediately at his side, all smiles and concern, painting a picture of a stressful week, handling his mother. Luke looked exhausted. I waited. That evening, I asked Luke to join me in my study. I just need your help with a financial query, dear, I said. He sat in the chair opposite my desk. I didn't show him the spreadsheet. Not yet. I showed him a single piece of paper, a printout of an email confirmation I had found in the recycling bin. Luke, I said gently, I received this. It's a confirmation for a supplementary credit card. It's an application for me, on your account. But I didn't apply for it. He took the paper, his engineer's mind focusing on the data. He frowned. That's my primary business card. I don't understand. They attached a signature, I said, handing him the second page, a copy of the application Naomi had managed to pull. Does that look like my signature to you? He stared at the shaky, distorted scan of the signature I had practiced on those utility forms. Tara had copied it from the forms I gave her and used it to apply for a card in my name. Mom, he said, his voice dropping. What is this? I was hoping you could tell me, I said, because that card has been very busy. I've seen the deliveries. High-end gourmet foods, all for Tara's locked freezer section, all paid for by this card. Your card. He looked like he was going to be sick. He didn't have an answer. He just looked at the paper, shaking his head. Before he could process, I showed him one more thing, a screenshot from a kitchen appliance website sent to me by Naomi. It was Tara's credit application for a $6,000 commercial-grade oven. It had been denied. Look at the proof of residency she submitted, I said quietly. He looked. It was a photograph, a close-up of that fridge, showing the labels Tara's Shelf and the TW Media sticker, all clearly displayed. I have to talk to her, he stammered, standing up. Yes, I said. You should. I let him leave the study. the papers still in his hand. I did not engage. I did not confront. I let the data speak for itself. My next calls were to finalize the Carrington family reunion brunch. The guest list was precise. Luke, of course. Mrs. Alvarez, who had agreed to come as a family friend. The head of the Ridgeview Homeowners Association, a man named Mr. Davies, who was very particular about zoning, and one final, unannounced guest. My last two preparations were the most important. First, I went online to the appliance store. I purchased a new refrigerator, a beautiful side-by-side model, larger than the one currently in my kitchen. I paid in full and scheduled the delivery for exactly 10:30 a.m. on Sunday. I registered the warranty in my name, only Evelyn Carrington. Second, I called an accounting firm called Mesa Ledgers. "Hello," I said. "I need to book a mobile auditor. I am the owner of a property that is being used as a principal place of business by a registered LLC, and I need an immediate consultation on my tax liability and potential zoning violations." They were, as I expected, very eager to help. They scheduled a priority audit for 11 a.m. on Sunday, a legal trap, perfectly set. I spent Saturday preparing. I gathered every document, the signed temporary occupancy agreement with Clause 7 highlighted, the city-issued event permit for my brunch, the digital log from the door sensors, showing the pantry door opening 3 times in the middle of the night, the detailed expense ledger, showing 0 contributions, the complaint, signed by Mrs. Alvarez, the business registration for TW Media, the fraudulent credit card application. I placed them all in a neat, brown accordion file. Everything was ready. That night, Saturday, I walked into the kitchen. Luke and Tara were not speaking. She was at the counter, angrily chopping vegetables. He was staring into space. I went to that fridge, the one Tara claimed. I looked at her labels, her padlock, her little kingdom of stainless steel. She glared at me. "Can I help you?" "Evelyn." I smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "No, dear, not at all." Sunday morning arrived, bright and cold. I was in the living room at 10 a.m., arranging pastries on a tray. When my guests began to arrive, Mrs. Alvarez came in first, followed by Mr. Davies from the Homeowners Association, whom I introduced as an old friend of the family. I had also invited a few other neighbours I had met, just to fill out the room. Luke was hovering near the fireplace, looking pale and holding a coffee mug with both hands. Tara emerged from the hallway. She was dressed in a white linen pantsuit, as if preparing for one of her lifestyle shoots. She saw the guests, and her face tightened. "Evelyn," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I believe I told you the kitchen was booked." She moved to the kitchen doorway, physically blocking it. "I'm sorry. Everyone?" she said to the room. "But this is my workspace. No one can go in. TW Media is on a deadline." I set down the pastry knife. I walked toward her, stopping a few feet away. I smiled, the same patient smile. "Your workspace. Tara. Whose area did you say this was?" She crossed her arms. "My kitchen. My area." "Ah," I said. I looked at the wall to her right, where a large object was draped with a drop cloth. "Then you must be referring to that fridge." I walked over to that fridge, the one she had claimed, the one with her labels and her padlock. It was sitting in the middle of the dining area, unplugged. "This one, I believe," I said. Then, I turned to the object covered by the drop cloth. "You see?" I needed a little more space for the brunch. I took the cloth by the corner and pulled. It glided to the floor, revealing a brand new, gleaming stainless steel refrigerator. It was beautiful, top of the line, and silent. Taped to the front, right at eye level, was the finalized, paid-in-full invoice and the 5-year warranty agreement. Owner, I read aloud. Evelyn Carrington. Address? This one. The room was silent. Tara stared at the new appliance. A small, ugly sneer crossed her face. Fine, she snapped. You bought a new one. That's fine. That just proves the old one is still mine. I paid for it. You are absolutely right, I said. You should hold on to that. Before she could form another word, the doorbell rang. I opened the door. 2 people, a man and a woman, stood on the porch. They were dressed in sharp, conservative suits and held matching leather portfolios. Good morning, the woman said. We are from Mesa Ledgers. We're here to conduct a preliminary tax review for a business registered at this address, TW Media, LLC. I looked past them, into my living room. Mr. Davies, the head of the HOA, turned his head sharply. Mrs. Alvarez looked fascinated. The other neighbors began to whisper. TW Media, I said, feigning confusion. Oh, you must mean my daughter-in-law. I turned. Tara, dear, these people are here for you. Something about business taxes. Tara's face went from pale to a mottled, sick white. There must be a mistake. I'm not. Are you Tara Whitlow, principal of TW Media LLC? The man from Mesa Ledgers asked, stepping inside. The address is zoned R1, residential. Mr. Davies, the HOA rep, said suddenly, his voice booming in the quiet room. Tara looked trapped. It's just a home office? I turned to the guests, my voice full of polite inquiry. That's a relief, because I was just telling Mrs. Alvarez. I was so worried about Tara's wine gala the other night. You know, when she was charging at the door, I was worried she didn't have the right permits. I looked directly at the accountants. Does TW Media LLC have a municipal food and beverage license? The woman from Mesa Ledgers made a note in her file. We have no record of one, she said. The noise. Mrs. Alvarez chimed in, stepping forward. And the trash. It was all over my lawn. She pulled 2 photographs from her purse and handed them to Mr. Davies. This was from her partner party last week. Mr. Davies looked at the photos of overflowing bins and wine bottles. He looked at Tara. I will be taking notes, he said. This is harassment. Tara shrieked. She looked at Luke. Luke, they're harassing me. Luke just stared at her, the fraudulent credit card application still clutched in his hand from the night before. It's just my food, my private food, Tara yelled, her professional poise completely shattered. She marched to the old refrigerator, and fumbled with the padlock on the freezer. This is my property. She ripped the freezer door open to show everyone her private, exclusive food. A cascade of items tumbled out onto the floor. Frozen artisan breads, vacuum-sealed steaks, and at the very top, a sleek, black designer handbag. It hit the floor with a soft thud. It was new, the price tag and security tag still attached. Along with it, a folded receipt fluttered to the ground. Luke bent down slowly. He picked up the receipt, not the bag. He unfolded it. He stared at it for a long, heavy second. He looked up at his wife, and I saw the exact moment the glacier finally cracked. This is my card, he said. His voice was hollow. The emergency corporate card. This handbag. It costs $2,000. Since when have you been using my card? Tara. Luke. He just shook his head, looking down at the proof of betrayal in his hands. Tara was breathing heavily, cornered, surrounded by accountants, an angry HOA rep, and disappointed neighbours. I let the silence hang for a beat. Well, I said cheerfully, the brunch isn't quite complete. We're still waiting on one more guest. They should be here any minute. The doorbell rang. It cut through the thick, toxic silence in the room. Tara was still frozen, staring at Luke, who was staring at the receipt. I walked to the door and opened it. The woman standing on the porch was a sharp contrast to the curated guests inside. She looked to be in her late 50s, but a harder 50 than mine. Her blonde hair was bleached to the point of breaking, and her thin jacket looked insufficient for the cold. She was clutching a cheap, imitation leather handbag and a piece of paper. She looked nervous and deeply confused. I'm here for Tara, she said, her voice a reedy whisper. I got this invitation. For the brunch, the celebration. You must be Colleen, I said, my voice warm. Please, come in. We were just starting. I stepped aside, and Tara's mother, Colleen Whitlow, entered my home. She looked around at the crowd, the neighbours, the men in suits. Her son-in-law holding a receipt, and her confusion visibly deepened. Tara, she called out tentatively. Tara spun around. The colour drained from her face, replaced by a flush of pure, hot rage. Mom, what are you doing here? You invited me, dear? Colleen said, holding up the crumpled invitation. For the Tara pregnancy sponsorship celebration. I was so surprised. You didn't tell me you were, well, you know. Luke took a sharp breath. Pregnancy. Sponsorship. Colleen suddenly looked terrified, as if she'd said the wrong thing. She rushed forward, grabbing Tara's arm. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Am I early? I saw Luke, and I wanted to apologize again. For those old loans, I promise. I'm paying them down. Honey, I didn't know the online gambling sites were so addictive. I'm so sorry. Luke. Luke's face was incomprehensible. He looked at his wife. Gambling loans. Tara ripped her arm away from her mother. Mom, stop it. You are not supposed to be here. You're embarrassing me. But the baby, Colleen whispered, her eyes filling with tears. There is no baby, Tara screamed. Oh, I think there is, I said, my voice cutting through her shriek. I walked to the coffee table, where my accordion file lay. I reached in and pulled out the photographs I had taken. The For Baby label on the crisper. The case of PR sample infant formula. The printout of her mother-to-be sponsorship pitch. I laid them out, one by one, on the table in front of the accountants and Mr. Davies. This is quite a baby. Tara, I said. 6 cans of formula. A full sponsorship package. Which baby is this? Exactly. Tara stared at the photos, her mouth opening and closing. The woman from Mesa Ledgers cleared her throat. Ms. Whitlow, she said, reading from her notes. Using a residential address for an unlicensed commercial enterprise, especially one involving the misrepresentation of food or health products, carries significant penalties. We are looking at initial fines starting at $5,000, not including the review from the IRS for undeclared income. And the Homeowners Association, Mr. Davies said, stepping forward with his own clipboard. Does not permit unregistered businesses. This is a formal citation. I'll need you to sign it. Tara looked around, her eyes wild, like a cornered animal. She saw the disappointed faces of the neighbors. She saw the cold, professional stare of the accountants. She saw her mother, crying in the corner. She saw Luke, holding the receipt for the $2,000 handbag, his face a mask of stone. She finally turned her gaze to me, and the hatred in her eyes was pure. This is all you, she shrieked, pointing her finger at me. This is your fault. You did this. You wouldn't let me eat. You starved me out. You hate me. That fridge is mine. That fridge is mine. Her voice cracked on the last word. The accusation hung in the air, absurd and desperate. I let it hang. I let everyone in the room hear it. Then, I walked back to my accordion file. I reached in and pulled out the last document, the temporary occupancy agreement, signed by her, signed by Luke. I held it up. I didn't raise my voice. I let my teacher's voice, the one that commands a room without shouting, take over. Tara, I said, that fridge is indeed yours, but this house is mine, and this agreement, which you signed, is a legal contract. I pointed to the highlighted section. Clause 7. Hosting unauthorized commercial events for which a fee is collected. That was your wine gala. Making unauthorized structural or security changes to the property. That was my pantry lock, which you broke. Both are listed as grounds for immediate termination. I folded the paper. This agreement is now void. You have violated the contract. You have 24 hours to remove yourself and your refrigerator from my property. Tara's face contorted. You can't do this. I'm calling the police. I'll tell them you're assaulting me. I'll tell them you're throwing me out. Please do, I said, my voice perfectly level. The entire room was watching. That would be excellent. We absolutely should have a police report. I gestured to the phone on the hall table. Go ahead. Tell them you've been served a legal notice of eviction for breach of contract, and that there are accountants here to discuss your tax fraud. They will be very interested. She faltered, her hand hovering in the air. At that moment, a woman stepped forward from the small cluster of neighbors I had invited. It was Naomi Pierce, my lawyer. Looking perfectly at ease in a tweed blazer and holding a small plate with a single pastry on it. Perhaps I can clarify the civil matter, Naomi said, her voice clear and bright, as if commenting on the weather. She set her plate down. I am Naomi Pierce, counsel for Mrs. Carrington. She walked over and picked up the temporary occupancy agreement from my file. Hello, Tara, she said. We haven't met. I just want to draw your attention to the compensation clause you agreed to. Section 9. I believe. She didn't need to look. It states that any damages to the property, costs for professional cleaning, fees associated with waste removal from commercial activities, and, most specifically, the settlement of any utility bills incurred by a commercial entity, are all the immediate responsibility of the signatory. That's you and TW Media LLC. She nodded toward the accountants. I believe the gentlemen from Mesa Ledgers have a preliminary invoice for the commercial rate utilities you've been using. And I, she added, have the bill for repairing the pantry door and the estimate for removing the wine stain from the kitchen counter. Luke, who had been standing silent, finally spoke. His voice was trembling, not with anger, but with a deep, hollow shock. A company. You turned my mother's home into a company. Tara spun on him, her last line of defense. You always take her side. Always I am trying to build something. You said you supported me. You said I was brilliant. I supported you, Luke said, his voice cracking. I didn't support this. This is not about sides. Luke, I said, speaking to my son. But for the room, I did not attack Tara. I did not call her names. I looked at the fireplace, where Marshall and I had hung stockings for 30 years. This house is not just an asset. It's not a venue or a backdrop. Marshall and I built this. Our memories are in these walls. Our Sunday dinners were at that table. Your first steps were in that hallway. Luke, this is a home, and it is not for sale, and it is not for rent. I turned back to the legal matters. Naomi, I said, perhaps you should show them the other items. Of course, Naomi said, reaching into her own briefcase. This was surprise number 1. She pulled out the credit card application, the one with my forged, shaky signature. Tara, this application for a supplementary card in the name of Evelyn C. It's a fascinating document. I spoke with the bank's fraud department on Friday. She laid it on the table. They noticed a few things. First, the font used in the digital application doesn't match the bank's standard issue. Second, the issue date you requested was a Saturday, which is a non-banking day. But most importantly, she pointed to the signature. This was scanned and uploaded. A signature that, coincidentally, looks exactly like the one Mrs. Carrington provided for the utility transfer forms, the ones you never filed. Luke looked ill. You forged her name. And then, Naomi continued, relentless. There is the matter of the pregnancy sponsorship. This was surprise number 2. She pulled out a copy of the contract Tara had been pitching. I took the liberty of reading the terms. It's a morals-based contract. But more specifically, it requires a verified 8-week ultrasound, dated, to be submitted with the invoice. I see you've already accepted the preliminary PR samples. She gestured to the cans of formula. But I'm curious where the ultrasound is. Tara was silent. Her mother, Colleen, was sobbing quietly. And finally, the man from Mesa Ledgers spoke up. Just so we are all clear. This was surprise number 3. Ms. Whitlow, we are required to inform you that as of this moment, your LLC's status is under review pending fraud investigation. If you or any agent of TW Media attempts to use this residential address for any business purpose after today, we are legally obligated to refer the case directly to the Internal Revenue Service for a full criminal audit. It was the final, devastating blow. Tara's whole body language changed. The fight went out of her, replaced by a cold, numbing panic. She wasn't just losing a place to stay. She was losing her entire fabricated empire. She looked at the old refrigerator, the one she had fought so hard for, the one filled with evidence. Her property. She finally understood. That fridge is mine. The very symbol of her control had just become the single biggest piece of evidence against her. It was a metal box full of her crimes, the wine for her illegal parties, the gourmet food bought with a fraudulent card, the handbag proving her theft from her own husband. It wasn't a prize. It was a liability. Luke finally moved. He walked past Tara, past her mother, and stood in front of me. He looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw my son, not the stressed engineer, not the flustered husband. I saw Luke. "Mum," he said, his voice thick. "I'm sorry." He didn't just mean for the credit card. He meant for all of it. "I stood in the middle," he said, "and I kept telling myself it was stress. I've been working so much, flying to Singapore, burying myself in projects. I let her. I let her manage everything. I didn't listen. I didn't want to see it. I am so sorry." I put my hand on his arm. This was the moment that mattered. I did not need to rub salt in the wound. I did not need to humiliate Tara further. The evidence had done its job. "I know, Luke," I said quietly. I turned my attention back to Tara. She was no longer screaming. She was just standing, rigid, by her refrigerator. I gave her the clear, calm timeline. "Tara, you have two choices," I said, my teacher's voice returning. 1. You will settle the bill for the damages, the cleaning, and the commercial rate utilities with the gentleman from Mesa Ledgers. 2. You will be out of this house, with your belongings, within 24 hours. If you fail to do either, Naomi will proceed with a formal, contested eviction and file a civil suit for damages and fraud. And, I added, glancing at the accountants, I will not be able to stop the IRS referral. It was then that Colleen, Tara's mother, let out a desperate, keening sob. It was a sound of old, deep pain. "It's my fault," she wept, rocking back and forth. "It's all my fault. Her father. He just left. One day, he was there. The next. His closet was empty. He took everything. Tara was 10. She learned you have to grab things. You have to lock them down. You have to possess them, or someone else will take them away from you. She just learned to possess things before she could be left with nothing." She looked at Tara, her eyes pleading, "Honey, this isn't the way." There was a flicker of something in Tara's eyes, a brief, terrible vulnerability. She was still that 10-year-old girl, afraid of an empty closet. I looked at her, not as a monster, but as a person who had made a series of destructive choices. "Tara," I said, my voice softer now, "your mother is right. You are at a crossroads. You can apologize, you can make amends, and you can start to fix this, or you can continue down this path and you will lose Luke. You will lose everything you were so desperate to hold on to." I gave her the choice. I gave her the dignity of a final move. She took a shaky breath, and the 10-year-old girl vanished, replaced by the cornered strategist. She saw Luke, standing beside me. She saw his choice, and she chose to fight. "You can't," she hissed, her voice low and trembling. "I'll sue you. I'll sue you for emotional distress, for harassment. I'll tell everyone." Naomi Pierce stepped forward, holding a new document, a single sheet of paper. "That's not a very good idea." "Tara," Naomi said, her tone almost bored. "Because this is a separation agreement, it's very simple. You agree to vacate the premises within 24 hours and waive all future claims against Mrs. Carrington. In exchange, Mrs. Carrington agrees not to pursue criminal charges for the credit card fraud or the forged signature. That is the offer." She placed the paper on the table. "If you do not sign this," Naomi continued, tapping the brown accordion file, "I am instructed to submit this entire file, the fraud, the fake pregnancy, the tax evasion, the witness statements to the Ridgeview Police Department and the District Attorney's Office. Personally, this afternoon. The choice is yours." It was a perfect checkmate. Tara stared at the paper, She looked at Luke. One last time. Luke. Luke walked to the table. He picked up the pen. But he didn't sign the agreement. He signed the bottom of the credit card application. The fraudulent one. "I've just signed this," he said to Naomi, "as a formal witness to the fraudulent activity on my account and the use of this address for her business. Do with that what you will." He put the pen down. He looked at his wife. "It's over. Tara." I walked to the center of the living room. My guests, my real guests, Mrs. Alvarez, Mr. Davies. The neighbors looked shaken. "Well," I announced, my voice warm again. "This has all been very trying, but I promised a brunch, and a brunch we shall have." I walked to my new, gleaming refrigerator. I've stocked this new one just this morning. It serves the real family. And, I added, I have a special section for the community brunch. I opened the door. Just as I did, the doorbell rang. One more time. I smiled. "I'll get that." I opened the door. 2 men in blue uniforms from the appliance store were standing there. "Good morning, ma'am," one said, looking at his clipboard. "We're here for the removal. We got an order to move one refrigerator under the name Tara Whitlow out to the garage for inventory." I stepped aside. "You are right on time. She's right over there." I pointed to the old, unplugged, padlocked refrigerator. "The one that's hers." The 2 appliance men were efficient. They wheeled their dolly past the stunned accountants, past Mr. Davies, and past a weeping Colleen. Tara had to physically step aside as they strapped her refrigerator and wheeled it, padlock and all, out the front door and down the path to the garage. Tara watched it go. Every ounce of her fight had evaporated, leaving a hollow, brittle shell. She walked to the table where Naomi was still standing, holding the pen. She grabbed the pen, her hand shaking. She signed the agreement without reading it again. Her final attempt at dignity was a pathetic, small sneer. "I don't care," she whispered, tossing the pen down. "I don't need your food anyway." "I know you don't," I said gently. I walked to my new, gleaming refrigerator, the one that was quietly humming in the corner. I opened the door. The inside was filled with light, and it was immaculately organized. "You see," I said, my voice calm. "I've always found that a home works best when things are clearly labeled." I pointed to the top shelf, which was laden with my own groceries. "This section is Evelyn's. It's full. I like my curry pastes." I pointed to the middle section, which was stocked with healthy, pre-prepared meals, protein shakes, and fresh fruit. "This is Luke's. For when he's on a deadline and forgets to eat, he needs his strength." Finally, I gestured to the entire bottom half, which was filled with the pastries, quiches, and fruit salads for the brunch. "And this section is labeled Guest Community Brunch. It's for everyone to share. You see, Tara, a refrigerator is for feeding people, not for controlling them." I had one final surprise. I walked to my file cabinet, the one in my study, the one with the lock I had installed, and opened the drawer. I took out my personal file. "You were so focused on the house," I said, "that you made a few assumptions." I held up the original deed. "This house is in my name, and my name alone. It was never Luke's. It was never going to be yours." I then pulled out a second letter, this one on thick, embossed letterhead. "And you were so focused on the idea that I was just a retired old woman, you forgot that I had a career?" I handed the letter to Luke. "What is this?" he asked. "It's a job offer," I said. "From your company, Apex Dynamics. They are launching a new community outreach program and need an art consultant. They've offered me the position. It seems my 25 years of managing school budgets and art departments are still quite valuable. I start in 2 weeks. I have my own income. Luke, I have my own life. I was never the dependent old woman she was planning to put in Golden Ridge care." I turned to Colleen, who was wiping her eyes on her sleeve. I had seen this coming. From my new fridge, I pulled a pre-packed grocery bag. It was filled with bread, milk, eggs, and some of the pastries. I handed it to her. "Colleen," I said, "you came here for a brunch. Please, take this. No one deserves to be hungry, and no one deserves to be shamed over a refrigerator." That was the moment. The act of kindness I showed her mother was the one thing Tara could not bear. It was the final, devastating proof that she had lost. She didn't cry for the house, or the money, or even for Luke. Tara Whitlow finally burst into tears because her entire, carefully crafted performance had been exposed as a cheap, cruel sham in front of the very people she needed to impress the neighbors, her husband, and her own mother. She had been publicly outmaneuvered by an old art teacher, Naomi Pierce, ever the professional, stepped in. She picked up the newly signed agreement. "Just for the official record," she read, her voice cutting through the sobs. "The final clause of this agreement states that should TW Media LLC, or any entity registered by Tara Whitlow, attempt to use this address for any correspondence, delivery, or registration ever again, this document becomes a formal confession, and Mrs. Carrington will immediately activate all civil and tax-related complaints. The file will be sent." It was done. The accountants and Mr. Davies left, their files full. The neighbours, after giving me quiet, supportive looks, filed out, promising to come back for a real brunch soon. Luke didn't say a word. He went upstairs. He returned 10 minutes later with 2 large suitcases and a garment bag. He placed them by the front door, next to the cheap handbag Tara's mother was holding. He looked at his wife, her face blotchy and ruined. His voice was heavy, not with anger, but with an immense, devastating sadness. "I'll put these in your car," he said. He didn't offer to drive her. He didn't touch her. He just picked up her life. He paused at the door. "If you are serious, if you get help, real, professional help, then we will talk, in a neutral place. But not here. Not now." He left. Tara, silent and defeated, followed her bags out the door. Colleen gave me one last, grateful, broken look, and followed her daughter. I stood in my foyer. The house was quiet. It was the first time it had felt like my own in months. I walked back to the kitchen. I closed the door of my new refrigerator. I looked at the table, still set for the brunch. My home was a home again. She said, "That fridge is mine." I let her keep that line while I kept the house. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm Evelyn, and this is Grandma's Family Diary. I read all of your comments, and I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Let's talk about this in the comments below. What did you think? Please, if you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, like this video. And if you can, support us by hitting that hype button. It truly helps get these stories out to more people who need to hear them.